you know that the ending in Casablanca is also, it's not happy, at least not for a couple. The Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart do not end up together. They are parted during that movie. But the reason this movie appears as a movie with a happy ending is because the main hero, who begins as a cynic and somebody who doesn't believe in any political action or that political action can have any real consequences, during the movie and especially at the end becomes becomes totally different. He becomes very political, and he decides he's going to join resistance in the Second World War. So the movie is obviously, it was made in 1942 when America joined the Allies in Europe to fight Hitler, and obviously this movie was made as a propaganda movie, you know, like telling people if Humphrey Bogart could give up Ingrid Bergman in order to save the world or save us from Hitler, then obviously even other people, other Americans can join this fight. So it's very funny that this movie is considered as a movie with a happy ending, but if you watch it very thoroughly, you can see that what the happy ending consists of is the willingness to go to war, the willingness to do the right thing, you know. So happy endings are very tricky in a sense that film critics love to just judge them and see them as, again, an ideological resolution of a narrative. But as we said before, this is not the case in majority of Hollywood movies, I would claim.
When I read it, it just made me think, like, how many of my assumptions about film and how to evaluate or critique them are bad. Like, that's kind of just like my instant takeaway is like, wow, I need to work on this, you know? And that's part of why we started the film club at Theory Underground, is so that people like me ultimately can learn to see film with not more critical eyes in the sense of, finding ways to deflate them and dismiss them, but more really how to enjoy them in a more sophisticated way. And so I'm looking forward to bringing on some of the members here to ask some questions in a minute. But I kind of wanted to those examples that you were just talking about with Casablanca and what was the other one? The Some Like It Hot.
Yep.
These are examples that you bring up in the in defense of happy endings piece, and you brought up a couple of other examples as well, kind of examples that run counter to this myth of the happy ending. Game of Thrones and The Handmaid's Tale, or is it The Handmaid's Tale?
Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale, yes.
Yep.
And so what do these films, in their sort of brutal realism or their what do they do to counter? I guess I'm having trouble here with the question, but it basically comes down to wondering what those films or they're not films, they're shows. What do they do that maybe most film critics don't really realize that they're doing? I don't know.
Okay, first of all, one thing has to be said. Like James McDowell, whom I mentioned, in Happy Endings, he has an interesting thesis that a happy ending, what makes a happy ending is that it promises a viewer something. It promises a world after the end of the movie. So there's a certain promise or inspiration that comes with happy ending. And my argument in that text you mentioned actually centers around the question, what does a serial narrative, so TV series, what does a serial narrative bring about? Because TV series introduced a narrative logic of never-ending stories. And this logic cannot be traced only to TV series, but also to movies today, because you know that every movie that Hollywood makes has to have a prequel or sequel or several of them. No movie is made today in Hollywood without a calculation of its potential continuation, right? So what I was debating and in my text was actually, is this logic of never-ending stories, logic of a narrative that can go on and on forever, and that sort of doesn't ever render meaning, a complete meaning, or it doesn't stand for any definite message of the series, is this really something emancipatory or realist? Or is it just also a resonance of the age we live today in a sense that in our current situation, as Frederick Jameson said, there is impossible to imagine the end of capitalism. So we are living in a time where we cannot even perceive the ending of a certain social order, and we cannot even begin to imagine another one. And I think that the logic of serial narrative sort of resonates this political dialogue also. So the problem with Handmaid's Tale and what was the other one, the Game of Thrones, is in my opinion in that both these TV series are sort of, the first is a fantasy genre and the second one is a dystopian sci-fi narrative, and both of them are sort of afraid of envisaging another kind of outcome. As you know, in the Game of Thrones, the order of that universe we are in is being restored in the end. So all the revolutionary agendas are sort of diminished, and what we see is just aristocracy getting their power back. And for me, it was fascinating that, you know, you put so much effort into creating a fantasy world in order just to show that there's no change is possible, that another order is not possible. And with Handmaid's Tale, which I find interesting, but what is really interesting in that TV series is the way it departs from the novel, Margaret Atwood's novel. Because in the TV series, you get flashbacks. The main heroine is remembering her past lives, the life she led before this terrible Republican or right-wing government took power. And her flashbacks are all just like, they're like a dream. There was this society where all the people, women and men, blacks and others, lived in perfect harmony. And this is what sounds fake to me, you know, because the story starts with premise that there was a great ecological catastrophe, and then in the aftermath, these right-wingers came to power. And, you know, just to assume that there was a time, I don't know which time, probably our time, neoliberal social democracy times or something like that, the time where everything was great, and then these evil right-wingers came and turned it all around. It doesn't sound convincing to me. And even if you take the ecological dimension seriously, there was obviously something wrong with a society that enabled such an ecological catastrophe. So everything could not be so perfect and fine. And this is where I think the series is sort of false, or it doesn't ring true. It rings false. I hope I answered your question.